Back in 2017, Tesla announced the Model 3, and now 6 years later, this car is still here. It's one of the most popular EVs you can buy, and it's largely the same car. It's a compact 5-seater sedan, and it has 4 doors, a trunk, a front trunk, all normal things you're seeing in electric cars today, but let's look through it. Today, this has an automatic hatch that opens for you at the touch of a button, and inside it has a lot of space. There's a bunch of space inside as well as one side cubby, and then this under storage compartment, and it's nice because it all closes underneath the trunk with this lid. We'll close that and then we'll check out the storage space on the front trunk. So up at the front trunk, there's actually no button to open or close this on the exterior of the car. And it's actually kind of an afterthought. It's not automatic, but it's really a good storage space and a good amount of storage when you just want to keep something in there long term that you don't have to think about. That's what I use it for the most, but the way I'm going to open this is from the app. So let me open my Tesla app here, go to controls, front trunk, here we are. And there is my front trunk. It has a good amount of space, but it's entirely manual. Close this and you actually have to be careful when you close it to be very gentle with that hood. So this is actually a 2021 Tesla Model 3, and only a couple things have changed. For one, on the bumper here, I have ultrasonic sensors, and new Tesla Model 3s do not have these sensors, and they actually don't have any parking sensor functionality at the moment I'm making this video. So this car still has it because it has the sensors, but Tesla plans to replace that feature with the cameras and software, but they've yet to do it. At the same time, this car has a radar sensor for Autopilot, although I do think it's been disabled at this point and it's just using Tesla Vision Autopilot, and new ones do not have a radar sensor whatsoever. Although they might be making that change soon, it's kind of complicated. So to enable Autopilot in this car, there are 8 cameras all around the car. There's these on the side here. There's actually 3 right up front here. There's cameras right here. And then of course you have your rear backup camera. It works really well in tandem with 2 of the side cameras when you're backing up, but then it also, of course, informs the Autopilot system. Right over here is the charge port door. So you can just press on that to open it. You can also open it from the app. You can also press the button on the charger as you're approaching it and it will open for you. Let me go ahead and close this from the app. And you can actually see the alignment isn't super great. Definitely could be better, and that's actually a common thing you see on Tesla's alignments in general, but then also the alignment of the charge port door in particular. Instead of a normal roof, the Model 3 has an all glass roof, and it's actually in 2 parts, split right here. So there's a beam down the middle that you can see inside as a passenger, but overall it provides great views and also great headspace. So this is actually what Tesla today calls the rear-wheel drive Model 3. It has the smallest battery pack, only is rear-wheel drive, and it's the cheapest one that they make, starting at $43,000. This is in Midnight Silver Metallic, which is a paint upgrade they sell, and they sell 5 different colors, with white being the stock color. And then these are the stock Aero wheels, as they call them. They also sell 18-inch wheels, but these are hubcaps. They get the most efficiency, so they get the best range you can get on this car, and the hubcaps come off. So this is what the hubcap looks like, and this is what the wheel looks like without it. It's a little dirty right now because I've just been driving with these on them. But if you want to drive without the hubcap, this is what the wheel looks like on these stock Model 3 wheels. One thing we've seen a lot from Tesla and now a lot of other companies making EVs is that these are all about efficiency and aerodynamics, and one of those things comes with door handles that are flush. So Tesla and other companies have done certain cars with these that actually come out for you before you get in, but this one you just press in here with your thumb and then pull. So now let's take a look inside the car. Up front, there are 2 fairly standard seats here with normal automatic adjustments. One thing to note is the passenger seat doesn't have moving lumbar support. It is fixed on the new Model 3s. But then you come to the back, there's 3 seats back here. The middle one is fairly small if you have all adults, so I'd say the back is basically going to be comfortable for 2 adults. But these also fold flat as necessary with a pass-through to the trunk if needed. On the back of the front seats are pretty standard seat back pockets. You have rear vents, 2 USB-C ports. This folds down for some cup holders and an armrest for those 2 adults that will fit back here. And then you have a coat hook right here. This is the very simple interior of the Model 3. So let's go over all the physical buttons that you'll be using when driving and such, and then show you that the rest is on screen. So you have your normal steering wheel, you have 2 scroll wheels. This one is for all of your media controls. Press it to play and pause, next, previous, volume up and down. This one is dedicated to Autopilot and voice commands. You press it for a voice command. You go left and right to change your following distance, and up and down to change your top speed for autopilot. Then these cars still have normal stocks, so you have your stock here. This is how you go into drive. You go all the way down for drive, all the way up for reverse. Press this for park. You can also go to neutral on this stock as well. And then the left stock is your normal blinkers and your windshield wiper controls. Although the windshield wiper controls are pretty basic, it's basically just pressing for wipers, and then it pops up on screen right here for you to dial that in. Or you can go into the controls menu and dial in wipers on screen here. For the most part, that's everything you'll be using physically while driving. These actually come in pretty handy. You get used to it, and you have your normal stock, so it's pretty nice. Over here, you have normal window controls. And then this is the button to open the door. There's not like a normal latch to open the door. You do this and it releases automatically, and then you just kind of push it open. That's something that'll be fun to explain to every single passenger that gets into your car who has not been into a Tesla before. Other than the buttons in the rear, these are your last physical buttons. You have your hazard lights right here, and then you can turn on these little tiny lights. Next to this is your normal visor. Nothing really too special about this. It's magnetic and it has lights, and then it goes back up. Bam. So right under the 15-inch main center screen is a wireless charger for 2 smartphones. Works fairly reliably. It's a nice texture here, and it should be charging in just a couple seconds here. There we go. Then right here is a slide drawer that gets you to your main console storage here. It's pretty deep, and there's lots of great accessories that I talk about in other videos, how you can optimize this. 2 normal size cup holders, nothing special about these. And then the armrest opens up for more storage. If I lift this out as well, you can see a good amount of storage down here. So you have a fair amount of options here, although this thing is fixed. Sometimes it's nice to have a little pass-through, but this definitely separates the 2 seats from one another. One little detail you'll notice in the interior right here is an interior camera. So Tesla's actually started to implement this for full self-driving, for driver monitoring, and somewhat, I think, for the normal built-in autopilot system. But overall, you can actually turn this off in data privacy settings if you don't want them using that whatsoever. Or I've seen a lot of people get a little cover for this just in case. With the Model 3, there are a few little annoyances that you'll notice over the course of ownership. For one, this back part of the trunk right here, just straight up plastic. A lot of cars are probably that way, but you're definitely gonna get scratches here. It's pretty much unavoidable if you're gonna use the trunk. Another thing is that for efficiency, the wheels and the tires are very close together to the point where you're almost definitely going to get curb rash on your Model 3. It's pretty much impossible to avoid completely unless you're conscious of it all the time. Another annoyance off the top of my head is with automatic windshield wipers. Tesla has designed this car to have lots of automatic features, including auto windshield wipers, but as soon as it is actually raining, they just do not hold up. They don't do a good enough job. So you end up having to press this button and then tap on screen to engage the wipers at the speed that you want. This is something my wife absolutely hates because she wishes she could just have an easy control on a stock like most cars have. So one thing I see a lot with Teslas is that people have some confusion as to how much you have to do on screen. Now there can be a lot that you have to do on screen, or there can be a little. So a lot of the main driving things and things you have to engage with when you're driving are actually controlled on the steering wheel and stocks and such. So of course, I went into drive with the stock here. I can adjust volume, pause, skip to the next track, all that with the left scroll wheel. Then with the right scroll wheel, I can do all my autopilot functions. I engage autopilot with the right stock by going down twice, and then I can adjust my top speed with this scroll wheel. I can also adjust my following distance by clicking right or left on this scroll wheel, and then I'm gonna go out of autopilot with that. Then of course I have blinker and everything, but then there are things that you do have to engage with on screen. They're not like essential driving functions, but they're things you are gonna change when driving. So one of those, for example, is climate controls. If you wanna adjust the vents or move anything around, you have to engage with the screen. I usually just keep it on auto and do a quick tap here down to the temperature, and I have my driver profile saving my vent positioning. But if you need to move that, that's something you have to do right here. Usually not too bad, but for some people that could be annoying. And then of course you have music right here. So on the left third of the screen is all your essential information. So if I close out music here, we can see what's happening. I have my speedometer, you can see what gear I'm in. I can see that autopilot is available. This line is giving me my regen info. It's showing me that as I'm braking, I am gaining some energy from regen braking. This is the top speed that autopilot is set to and the speed limit in the zone right now. And then of course, autopilot visualizations. And if I want, I can close out this card to make them even bigger. That's the card for quick music controls. And then it goes down here and I can bring it back in right there. And then also swipe that over for a lot of other information like the odometer, and tire pressure. One of the things that's cool about Tesla Autopilot in all of their cars, including this Model 3, compared with other self-driving systems, is that it's designed so that it can work in almost any situation with a well-marked road. So right now, I'm in normal traffic, I'm not on a freeway, and it usually works pretty well, and it says that it's available for me. The only thing is the top speed is capped at 5 miles per hour above the speed limit in these situations, which usually shouldn't be a problem, but is the case. And that's different than normal autopilot on a freeway. So I'll just go into autopilot here. And of course, I have to be prepared to take over if necessary, but it's going to come up and automatically slow down for the car in front of me. And in my experience with Autopilot in the Model 3, it's one of the easiest to use systems compared with others. I've driven a number of cars with different self-driving and driver assistance features, and some of them get pretty complicated with the amount of buttons they have, and I think Tesla did a really good job here just making it really simple. It's basically just 2 stages that you can enter. You either have adaptive cruise control or you have autopilot. Right now I'll go into adaptive cruise control, so I'm just going to press down once on the right drive stalk, and now that is my top speed. 53 is the max it's going to go. It's keeping a distance between me and the car in front of it, and then of course I am handling steering here, and we'll come up to this light where it's going to brake for me, and we can see how smoothly it does that. Sometimes the braking is a little too intense, and sometimes the accelerating is like a launch when you're in stop and go traffic, but right now it's doing a pretty good job. And of course, if I want it to get closer to this car, I can adjust my following distance closer. But then the level above that is autopilot and auto steer, where it's going to be steering for you. So I just press down twice on the drive stalk, and now it's handling everything and keeping me centered in the lane. And I think the visuals are also pretty clear. Anytime you're seeing blue on screen, that means it's autopilot. Now this is basic autopilot. I have not paid for any upgrades. This is what comes standard on every Tesla that you can buy. And for me, still, that is what I recommend the most. Tesla sells a $6,000 enhanced autopilot package, which I don't find worth it, especially since some of the features are still not active because they removed ultrasonic sensors. And then Tesla also sells full self-driving for $15,000. Now, if you are very interested in beta testing something, you can go for that, but other than that, I recommend that for nobody. Now we're on the freeway, let's give autopilot a try, and I can show you that there's basically 3 ways to get out of it. So I'm gonna go into autopilot here, and as always, I can set my top speed to whatever I want it, and set my following distance. 2 is the minimum, 7 is the maximum, and then 85 is your top speed because they've actually since changed that since switching to Tesla Vision for autopilot. That is one interesting thing worth noting on the software side. This car used to be able to do autopilot up to 90 miles per hour when it was using the radar sensor, but then they changed their whole system and eliminated radar systems in newer cars and made the top speed 85 instead of 90. And now that software has made it to this car, and my top speed on autopilot is changed in this car that used to be able to do it at 90. Just something to keep in mind. I never need to go 90 on autopilot, but that kind of thing is possible, that they can take away a feature in the future on your car. With basic autopilot, it's all just lane keeping, and then you can change lanes from there. So I'm gonna go down twice on the drive stalk, I'm in autopilot, and then if I need to change lanes, there's a couple ways to do it. One, you can disengage autopilot entirely and then change lanes. I kind of like doing it that way a lot of the time because I like to be totally in control and then go back into it. But the other way is that you literally signal, steer out of autopilot, cruise control is still on, but now it's only cruise control. See, it's not doing lane keeping. Then I go back into autopilot. That's a pretty easy way to do it, and I think that's almost on par with just having auto lane change, which they only sell now in the $6,000 package or the $15,000 full self-driving package. But once you're in autopilot, there are then 3 ways to disengage. One is that if you're in an emergency situation, you can just steer out of it. So right now, if for some reason it's veering too far, I can just steer out of autopilot. But now I'm in cruise control. That's the only confusing thing about this system, I think. But the other ways are if I'm in full autopilot, up on the drive stalk, and you're completely out of the system, I think that's the easiest, best way to do it. Or if you're in autopilot, you press the brake and you're out of autopilot. Those are the main ways to get out of it. And overall, I think you'll find kind of a routine here to where this kind of traffic, I'd totally be in autopilot without any issue. Then if I need to change lanes, signal, steer, change lanes, re-engage autopilot, and now it's driving for me for however long. Then if I'm approaching like a super big slowdown, I know the car will stop, but it will just do it a little harsher than I want to, so I'll just disengage and slow down myself. One thing that I've gotten very used to in this car and definitely miss when I'm driving other cars is the blind spot camera that comes up on screen. So when I engage the blinker right here, it pops up with this blind spot camera, and there's actually 3 locations I can put it. So I can just drag this over to here or over to here, and it'll stay there, and these adapt accordingly. But you will notice the screen is getting a little busy. Of course, this is only popping up when you need it, so it's going to disappear, and now my screen looks pretty normal. But it is covering up some stuff, so this 15-inch screen, single screen, no instrument cluster, is getting a little bit busy now that they're adding more and more features like this. That said, I'm extremely used to this camera in this location, and I definitely miss it when I drive any other car. So I was mentioning that you can customize where this goes, but you can also customize your dock. So you press and hold here, you can choose what apps you want there at any given time. And this is pretty much what I keep. I keep my rear camera, Tidal, Apple Music, Bluetooth, and then the dash cam button right there. And once you have it customized, everything is pretty much a click away. Even for like the windshield wipers, which I still find annoying, I can press this and then it's right there. Or if I need to adjust my headlights, I can flash the brights, I guess is the way that that comes up, and then my light settings come up right there. I still think it's not ideal, and some of those things I do miss a stock for, but they're not as complicated as like having to dive deep into the menu like this. Pretty much I am never touching these menus when I'm actually driving. That said, there's plenty of room for improvement for Tesla in this car. Let me give you an example right here. I'm going to go to Music. Now, Tidal and Apple Music and Spotify work really well when it's integrated on screen and you're choosing something recently played or from your collection, one of these big icons. If that's all you need to do and you just click play, then that's great. But if you're like me and sometimes you're trying to search for a very specific recording, let's see how voice commands do. Play Come Fly With Me by Frank Sinatra. So these are my results for Come Fly With Me by Frank Sinatra, one of the most popular songs of all time. And not only did it not play the song, but it actually just brought me to the search of Come Fly With Me by Frank Sinatra. And to me, I'm amazed that this is still not fixed. If I just delete the word by, it's actually going to find it, because clearly it has not found the song, even though there's so many versions of that song, especially by Sinatra. Right now it has all these karaoke versions because it's searching for a song called Come Fly With Me by Frank Sinatra. Not Come Fly With Me by Frank Sinatra. So let me just take out the word by, and I think it'll figure this out. There we go. Sometimes that's something I'm having to do while driving, and that is definitely not a good setup. That said, there are a ton of voice commands. Now, I get a lot of comments about people saying, why don't you talk about the voice commands in this car? You don't have to touch the screen, you can use a voice command. Now, for me, I do not ever see a scenario where I want to tell my car with my voice to do something very basic for me that is simply controlled with a stock in another car. I'd rather just tap really quickly. But they do exist, and sometimes they work great. Like, let's see, I'm at 75 degrees right now. Change temperature to 72. See, that's already longer than I wanted it to be, but it worked. And then I can change fan speeds, I can do all sorts of stuff, I can change the volume, and then you can do specific things like change the fan speed. Let's say I want it on high, change fan speed to high. See if it, turned it to 1, so I think it misunderstood that, but it went over to manual, and then it's changing my fan speed. Put fan speed at 8. Okay, decreased by 8. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of these voice commands are not super reliable, but you can figure out the ones that will actually work for you over time. I just don't see them as a viable replacement for just tapping the screen. So here's an example of one I find kind of funny. Pull up rear camera. There it is. Versus I could have just gone like this. Now I understand if you're trying desperately to keep your hand on the wheel, all you had to do was press this scroll wheel right here that's on the wheel. You didn't even have to look over to the screen. But if you're pulling up the rear camera and you have it in the dock, it's right there. One of the best things about this car is regen braking and one-pedal driving. Now, a lot of people will talk about how every car has that now, every electric car, and that is true. A lot more electric cars are coming out with really great regen and one-pedal driving. Some of it isn't as intense as this, to where I can just let off and I'm gonna fully be able to come to a stop, and then the car will hold for me once I get to 0, and I literally never have to touch the brake. Not every electric car is like that quite yet, but we're definitely getting there. But one benefit Tesla recently added with a software update is that you have regen braking at any time. Normally with electric cars, you're not going to have regen available as strong from 80 to 100%, or when the battery's really cold, and that's because there's actually nowhere for that energy to go. But Tesla added this feature right here, apply brakes when regenerative braking is limited, and it explains how it works. And basically it's just faking it. It's actually still enabling one pedal driving, but it is applying the brakes in the same way that regen would feel. I think that that is a super useful feature because you get used to one pedal driving and you never have to get used to something else. It used to be kind of weird. You would charge up to 100%, and for the first 20, 30 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes of your drive, it felt like a completely different car. Now the crossover SUV is the most popular shape of vehicle right now, and the Model Y fits in that category, which is this car's like older sibling, I guess you could say. Or younger but larger. In any case, this car is the more fun to drive than the Model Y. I love the Model Y, it's the ideal shape for me and what I need, and it's super practical, but just driving this thing, it's so zippy and so fun to corner in. I just don't think it can be beat, even though I prefer the Model Y. This is the rear-wheel drive standard range base model Model 3, and it just has so much power whenever you need it. And then you have regen braking that's coming off of that right there. It's so useful and just so much torque at any given time. Even right there, coming down from 40, I still have not touched the brake, and I'm just easing off of the accelerator, come to a complete stop, and then right here it's going to go into hold, and I'm good to go. Now this car isn't known for touting its 0 to 60 or anything. I think it's 5.8 seconds now, and this one is technically a little bit faster at 5.3 because they changed the motor or something, but let's check it out. Definitely faster than most cars out there, and a lot of people are not going to use that full 0 to 60, but it comes in handy, especially merging onto freeways or in tight situations, and then it's just fun. Now there are two things I've noticed about this Model 3. It's a 2021 Model 3, and it was right after they refreshed it and changed a couple things, but they hadn't changed the internal chip on the computer yet. For the most part, I'm not having any issues or anything, but I do notice it being slower. I have a newer Model Y, and you can definitely notice the difference here, and then there's certain apps and certain features where it's that kind of feeling where it feels like the car has been updated, but the hardware is not quite holding up as well as it used to because it's new software made for newer hardware. So that is something to keep in mind. This car is going to get software updates and you're going to get lots of new features all throughout ownership. And for the most part, I don't think people have huge issues with that, but it does get a little slower, I think. The screen doesn't feel quite as fast as it used to. The other thing is ride quality. I've actually noticed how bumpy this car is now that I have a newer Model Y. And I used to think the opposite because the 2020 Model Y, super rough ride quality, but it has gotten a lot better, and I actually noticed this older one, it's pretty bumpy sometimes. Tesla has updated that with a comfort suspension though in both the Model 3 and the Model Y, and I've yet to drive that Model 3, so I'm curious to see how big of a difference it makes there, but it is worth noting. The ride quality in this car is not as smooth as you would get in other cars, especially in its price range. As far as rattles and stuff, I think we have one in the door that we kind of noticed early on and tried to get fixed, but had no luck there. But overall, there actually hasn't been too much. Now, we have driven this car less than others. This only has about 16,000 miles on it at this point. So that is something to keep in mind, but we've driven it enough to where most things should pop up, and those Tesla build quality things you hear about, we should have experienced, and we haven't. But one of the best parts about the Model 3 and any Tesla is an advantage that Tesla still is gonna have for a while, and that's supercharging. So right now on the screen, I'm just going to zoom out, but I can tap here and then tap Superchargers, and I can see so many supercharger locations around my area, but pretty much no other electric car out there, and even for some time, is able to do this. And what I mean is that it calculated my route with all these charging stops, and I know that all of these charging stops will charge my car at reliable speeds. There's no other network like that, and no other car has access to that many chargers yet, and I still think it's going to be the biggest advantage for Tesla going forward for a long time. If those were all Electrify America stops, I would be extremely worried for my trip and stressed out if I was going to ever make my destination. And I say that from experience in a Rivian R1T, which we drive a lot. Now for me, I'm not often just navigating to a charger because I'm charging at home, and that usually is the easiest. But if I'm navigating somewhere for a trip, let's try that out. So I personally always build in like a 10% buffer in my trips, just 10% above what Tesla predicts that I need to get to my next stop. So I do wish they could fix that. It's something they're always optimizing and figuring out with their cars, and figuring out with your car specifically for range predictions and such, but it always seems to miss it just by the littlest bit. Here's an example of me routing from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and this is a standard range Tesla, 356 miles, definitely above the range of this battery. So let's see what it's gonna have me do. It's finding superchargers along the route, and then it's gonna route me all based on that. For this car specifically, which is the lowest range one, it's gonna have 3 different stops for me. So it has me stopping in Castaic, Kettleman City, and Gilroy on my way. And you can see 31% and then 14% and 14% are its predictions for getting to those chargers, and then arriving at 19%. This is another example. I just charge a little more at Kettleman City or at Castaic so that I make sure that I have an extra buffer above what Tesla is predicting. But the reason it's 3 stops instead of what maybe seems like it should only be 2, since the range of this car is 272 miles, is because it's optimizing for your charging time, which is faster at lower states of charge. So you're not actually charging up to 100% and then going to your next stop. You're probably charging to 70 or 80%, then going to your next stop, and you're gonna get the most bang for your buck time-wise on a road trip that way. But overall, this integration works really well, and it's all built on Google Maps, which I think is great for Tesla to do instead of trying to build their own thing, because in this case, you don't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So the maps needs to be really good. In the Rivian R1T, they have built-in maps, and it is not good. This is very good, so it makes the fact that you can't have other things like CarPlay or Android Auto okay, because their built-in system works really well and is integrated incredibly well with Tesla Superchargers. So that's for supercharging and when you're using these cars on a road trip, and that's also for the standard range Tesla. They also sell this exact car in an all-wheel drive long range version. Has a couple tiny upgrades other than that, but overall, same exact interior, same exact experience. It's just a longer range and more powerful. And in that car, you're gonna not have to charge as frequently. But the majority of the time, you're gonna be charging at home, so let's check out what that's like for me. The best part about this car, and any electric car for that matter, is charging at home if you're able to do so. For me, I back into my driveway, I grab my charging plug like so, open the charge port, do that, and that's all I do. This is lit up blue right now because it is scheduled to charge tonight at 9 p.m. when I have my off-peak hours and my electricity is the cheapest. I could charge it anytime if I wanted to, but that is the smartest for the overall grid and for my cost. And so that's all I do. I get home, plug in, it's gonna charge at the right time, and then I never have to go to a gas station again. It's pretty nice. I'm currently using the Tesla wall connector, and this will get you the best speeds that you can get at home, and that's actually wired into my panel, but their mobile connector also works great, and I use that on a NEMA 1450 for years. Overall, the Model 3 is a solid, great car. It's very simple, and for some people it's a little too simple, and the interior might feel like it doesn't have enough there. But as a daily driver vehicle, it's really great to drive and includes a lot of great features that you'll want to have. This is a 2021 Model 3, so it's now 2 years old. It has been holding up great for us, and we'll see what the future holds for Tesla improving this car even further. In the meantime, if you want to see my full review of this car's larger sibling, the Model Y, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.